Farmers' protests in Brussels, in Warsaw, in Athens, or in Avignon, France, were to no avail. Tomorrow in Paraguay, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will formally sign the Mercosur agreement. This is a blow to Polish and European agriculture.
To prawdziwe tsunami dla europejskiego rolnictwa.
This is a real tsunami for European agriculture. The European Commission, subservient to German interests, is blindly destroying European agriculture, making room for products from Mercosur countries, solely so that Germany can become the food distributor for the whole of Europe. It's similar to the Nord Stream 2 project. Producers from Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina will gain access to EU markets. This means that food of questionable quality, stuffed with chemicals and substances that are not allowed on our continent, will soon appear in Europe. In addition, Mercosur countries are dominated by large corporations in which German and Dutch companies have shares. Such unfair competition will simply destroy Polish family farms. If things continue like this, agriculture in Poland will practically have to be shut down. This is not just about farmers, it's about the entire food production in Poland. Reading these regulations, farms should be closed down today. Mercosur countries and Germany are already counting their profits. Opening markets to cheap food from South America is part of a bigger deal. It's simply about facilitating exports, especially of German cars, to Latin American countries. Donald Tusk is weak in all these relations. He was unable to prevent this despite flexing his muscles and saying that no one in Europe can outplay him. The Polish Prime Minister first said that Mercosur would be thrown in the trash, then that it was actually a pretty good deal, and now that he can't really do anything because the European Parliament will decide anyway.
Potrzebujemy tutaj głosowania w Parlamencie Europejskim, a później będą wszczęte.
We need a vote in the European Parliament here, and then procedures will be initiated. And Poland is consistent here. Our MEPs, myself included, will not be subject to any pressure or requests. Donald Tusk did nothing to create a blocking minority when we had the Polish presidency. Later, he said that the provisions of the Mercosur agreement are safe, and the Minister of Agriculture was in Brussels for the first time on January 7th, the Polish Minister of Agriculture, to discuss Mercosur, and he still does not know what is in the agreement. So we have this nonsense. In Poland, they say they wanted to do something, but in reality, they couldn't do anything because they are pursuing German interests in Poland. That's why Donald Tusk was brought back, among other things, to push through the Migration Pact and the agreement with South America that is ruining European and Polish agriculture. The Prime Minister did nothing to defend Polish farmers, who protested and continue to protest wherever possible, in Europe and on the streets of Polish cities, against an agreement that also affects consumers. This is today's demonstration by farmers in Pyrzyce, in the West Pomeranian province.
Protest w Warszawie pokazał.
The protest in Warsaw showed that there are many farmers after all. The Polish Prime Minister came out and actually ridiculed our protest, saying that he expected more of us. So why did he order the services, the police, even using a police helicopter, to stop farmers who wanted to drive their tractors into Warsaw? Such hypocrisy at full throttle. At the expense of our health and Polish agriculture, Germany has secured new markets for its cars and household appliances. And Tusk, who for several years of negotiations deceived farmers that he would protect them from this agreement, ultimately betrayed Polish farmers. The EU assures us of vague safety clauses that are supposed to protect farmers, but the authorities of the South American countries that will benefit from the agreement claim that nothing of the sort has been agreed upon. Although the entry into force of Mercosur seems inevitable, farmers from all over Europe are not giving up and are going to Strasbourg on January 20th. We want to show the solidarity of European farmers and that all the problems that the European Commission is causing us today affect us all equally. There is still a chance that the German-South American agreement will be dealt with by the Court of Justice of the European Union. Law and Justice is also submitting a motion for the Polish Sejm to adopt a resolution that will oblige the government to challenge the Mercosur agreement before the European court. At stake in this game are Polish farmers, Polish farms, and Polish food. Pressure on Iran continues unabated. The United States confirms the deployment of additional forces to the Middle East. American strike groups led by aircraft carriers are being sent to the region. The Pentagon officially emphasizes that these are preventive and defensive measures. But in diplomacy, such a move is always treated as a political signal. Washington wants to be ready for any scenario, even the most extreme.
The truth is, only President Trump knows what he's going to do, and a very, very small team of advisors are read into his thinking on that. And as I just told you, he continues to closely monitor the situation on the ground in Iran. And as we saw yesterday, he had heard that the killings and executions would stop. And we have seen 800 people, their lives have been spared as a result of that. The president continues to closely monitor, but also keep all of his options on the table.
At the same time, the pressure shifted to the international arena. In New York, at the initiative of the United States, an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council was held on the situation in Iran. The deliberations focused on both the ongoing protests and the risk of external escalation. Calls for de-escalation and diplomacy were the first to be heard. Representatives of the UN Secretary General warned that tensions within Iran and threats of military action were fueling each other. In their view, any ill-considered move could lead to an uncontrollable regional crisis.
In this context, we note with alarm various public statements suggesting possible military strikes on Iran. This external dimension adds volatility to an already combustible situation.
These words did not go unanswered by Tehran. The Iranian delegation rejected suggestions that the country was seeking escalation and at the same time issued a clear warning to the United States and its allies. The tone of the statement was calm, but the message was clear.
Iran seeks neither escalation nor confrontation. However, any act of aggression, direct or indirect, will be met with a decisive, proportionate, and lawful response under Article 51 of the Charter. This is not a threat. It is a statement of legal reality. Responsibility for all consequences will rest solely with those who initiate such unlawful acts.
A few minutes later, there was a sharp response from the United States. The American ambassador rejected Tehran's narrative that the protests were inspired from outside and directly accused the Iranian regime of systematically using violence against its own citizens. The speech was clearly confrontational in nature.
President Trump is a man of action, not endless talk like we see at the United Nations. He has made it clear all options are on the table to stop the slaughter. And no one should know that better than the leadership of the Iranian regime.
People got killed.
However, the highlight of the meeting was the speech by Iranian journalist and opposition activist Masih Alinejad. Instead of political declarations, she cited specific names and stories of victims. The room fell silent.
Siavash Shirzad, 30 years old. His family begged him not to go to the streets because of his safety. He said to his family, I go to the street to celebrate the victory of our revolution because President Trump promised to rescue our lives. He was killed by the same Revolutionary Guards. Negin Qadimi, 20 years old. She died in her father's arms after being shot by the Revolutionary Guards member. I feel guilty that I don't name the rest. The list of names goes on and on. They knew they will face guns and bullets, but they wanted justice.
Meanwhile, only fragmentary information is coming out of Iran itself. Many regions still have no internet access, and access to independent sources is severely restricted. Witnesses report the presence of military personnel on the streets and heightened security checks. We haven't heard anything from Iran for 3 days. We have no contact with our families. From what Turkish television is showing, the situation looks calmer, but we don't know what's really going on. Pressure on Iran is mounting on several levels simultaneously: military, diplomatic, and political. The United States is demonstrating its readiness to act. The UN is calling for restraint, and Tehran is sending deterrent signals. For the region, this is a moment of suspense, in which each subsequent move may determine whether the situation will be brought under control or escalate into an open crisis. Until recently, the tanker Veronica sailed under the flag of Guyana. Last week, it suddenly changed its name to Galileo and its flag to Russian. Theoretically, its home port is Taganrog on the Sea of Azov. This is the 6th vessel seized by the United States in recent weeks in the Caribbean that was transporting Venezuelan oil or had done so in the past. This seizure supports the proclamation of the President of the United States, targeting sanctioned vessels that threaten the security and stability of the Western Hemisphere. The operation was executed by Department of Homeland Security components with support from the Department of War, showcasing a whole-of-government approach to protect the homeland. Earlier, commentators and experts warned that U.S. attacks on the Shadow Fleet could result in a serious response from Russia.
The Shadow Fleet and the boarding of the Marinera tanker, previously known Bella 1, after it obtained the Russian flag, is a telling example. Certainly a move bound to raise tensions with Russia and risks escalation. But the Trump administration likely found that stepping back would show weakness, and hence whether actions against Russia-flagged or even Chinese-flagged vessels will continue.
Meanwhile, there has been no significant reaction other than protests and requests for the release of the crew, which is evidence of the Kremlin's growing caution and perhaps even weakness. Let us recall that Russia has been using the so-called Shadow Fleet for years to transport sanctioned goods, in particular oil, under the flags of other countries to avoid controls.
Russia has traditionally enjoyed the anonymity and opacity of very obscure ownership structures and flagging practices all around the world to sever its direct connection, at least seemingly, between itself and the Shadow Fleet that engages in a number of deceptive shipping practices.
The tanker Marinero, registered as a Russian vessel, was seized in the North Atlantic last week. The U.S. action was supported by the Royal Navy of Great Britain.
The UK, at the request of the US, supported this operation as part of global efforts to crack down on sanctions busting and shadow shipping activity. This is a sanctioned, stateless vessel which carries a long history of nefarious activity and shares close links with both Iran and Russia.
Earlier, the Americans seized the tanker Olina, which, according to a public database, was falsely flying the flag of East Timor.
Seizing tankers is a very costly measure. Of course, these military operations have their own costs. And then there's a very significant question that has to be answered, which is what will happen to the tanker? How long will the seizing authority be willing to keep this tanker at port? Will it pay for the maintenance? What will happen to the crew and the cargo? These are questions that have traditionally deterred coastal states from taking such actions. The U.S. is really reshaping the playing field in this regard.
After the capture and trial of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro, the United States has further tightened its blockade of sanctioned ships sailing to and from the South American country. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado presented her Nobel Peace Prize medal to U.S. President Donald Trump. Maria Corina Machado said the gift was in recognition of President Trump's commitment to the freedom of the Venezuelan people. It was my great honor to meet Maria Corina Machado of Venezuela today. She is a wonderful woman who has been through so much. Maria presented me with her Nobel Peace Prize for the work I have done. Such a wonderful gesture of mutual respect. Thank you, Maria. First of all, I was very impressed by how well he understands the situation in Venezuela, how much he cares about the suffering of Venezuelans. I assured him that Venezuelan society is united, that today, more than 90% of Venezuelans want the same thing. We want to live in freedom, dignity, and justice. We want our children to come home. And for that to happen, there must be democracy. Although Machado presented Trump with the gold medal that honorees receive along with the award officially remains her property. The Norwegian Nobel Institute has reiterated that once an award has been granted, it cannot be transferred, divided, or revoked.